What do they call you? Wheels?
Jean Grey is one of the most powerful characters in the Marvel Universe, with her Omega-level telepathy, her telekinesis, and even the full power of a cosmic force at her beck and call, the Phoenix. Though frankly, I think her most impressive power is the ability to come back from the dead, again and again and again.
You thought you could kill Jean Grey? Please!
But how many times has Jean Grey actually died? It all began in 1976, in the pages of X-Men issue 100. In this pivotal story, after the X-Men battle Sentinels in space, Marvel Girl offers to pilot the spaceship back down to Earth, being the only person that can protect themselves from the deadly solar flares occurring at the same time. On the journey home, her telekinetic shield starts to falter and the radiation begins to kill Jean, with her calling out for help. Now, as originally written, Jean emerges from Jamaica Bay in issue 101 as the Phoenix.
X-Men! No longer am I the woman you knew. I am life incarnate. I am Phoenix!
Which is an extension of her powers and nothing more. However, this is famously retconned in Fantastic Four issue 286 to make the Phoenix a cosmic force that took Jean's place in her moment of need. Don't worry if that's confusing, this will come up again later in the video. Classic X-Men issue 8 includes a backup story which details Jean and the Phoenix's first interaction, with the Phoenix putting Jean's body into a cocoon so that it can heal. So, does this count as a death? Well, I think that if the Phoenix hadn't intervened at this moment, Jean would certainly have died, and it's never stated that Jean's body in the cocoon doesn't need reviving, so I'm going to count it. Additionally, as Jean's mind lives on in this body created by the Phoenix, I'm counting this as a resurrection too. Jean Grey is then the superhero Phoenix for the next 37 issues, having strength comparable to Thor, and even saving the universe from collapse. However, due to the scheming of the Hellfire Club and the illusionist Mastermind, Jean is slowly corrupted and transformed into Dark Phoenix, filled with anger, passion, and hate. After she commits genocide against the Dabari people, the Shi'ar Empire attempt to have Jean executed for her crimes, which the X-Men try to prevent by having a battle on the blue area of the moon. In the conclusion to the Dark Phoenix Saga, X-Men 137, Jean, who has had the powers of the Phoenix suppressed, realizes that the return of Dark Phoenix is inevitable and that she won't be able to control it. So, to prevent any further destruction, she uses a disintegration ray on herself to end the Phoenix once and for all. Jean's death has major ramifications on the X-Men series and is widely popular. But, spoilers, it does not last. Just 6 years later, in Avengers 263, a cocoon is found at the bottom of Jamaica Bay. The Fantastic Four investigate this in FF 286, and Jean Grey emerges from the cocoon, not dead, and has no memories past X-Men issue 100. This issue established that the Phoenix had used a portion of Jean's consciousness to become her, all the way through to X-Men 137, therefore clearing Jean of any wrongdoing. Though, in the time since, Jean has regained those memories of Phoenix, and has accepted that she is responsible in all the ways that matter. After her return, Marvel Girl is a founding member of X-Factor, alongside the other original X-Men, and she fights Apocalypse, her clone Madeline Pryor, and even a space war without dying. It's not until the summer of 1991 that Jean faces death once more, and it's rather anticlimactic. In Infinity Gauntlet issue 2, Marvel Girl is one of the many heroes that have been killed by Thanos, who used the Infinity Gauntlet to eliminate 50% of all life in the universe. Yes, Jean was dusted, but this is ultimately reversed by Nebula a day later. In August of 1991, Jean Grey is then involved in the insanely popular relaunch of X-Men, which had her joining the Gold Team under the leadership of Storm over in the pages of Uncanny X-Men. In issue 281, the team's very first mission, they face off against the Sentinels, and Jean is brutally attacked, with her being pronounced dead at the scene. But in the very next issue, Professor X realizes that Jean has not died, but instead placed her mind in the body of Emma Frost, who was also comatose, in order to defeat the villain, Trevor Fitzroy. So whilst this seemed like a death, this does not actually count because she faked it. surprisingly, Jean spends the next decade not dying. In fact, she stays pretty safe, even retiring at one point from the X-Men, though she eventually does get dragged back into the fray. By the Revolution era of 2000, now going by Jeangrey Summers, she had started to show signs of the Phoenix again, and this is further expanded upon in Grant Morrison's seminal New X-Men run, where she reconnects with the cosmic power. In New X-Men 148, Jean and Logan find themselves trapped on Magneto's old base, Asteroid M, hurtling towards the sun. Don't ask, that's another video entirely. The closer they get to the sun, the warmer it becomes and the harder it is for them to breathe, so Wolverine decides to stab Jean to end her suffering in a panel that 1000% inspired the finale to X-Men The Last Stand.
Save me. I love you.
However, since Jean is tied to the Phoenix revives her almost instantly, and having access to the full extent of her powers, Jean telekinetically returns them both to Earth. Jean's tenure as the Phoenix is short-lived, however, as in New X-Men 150, Magneto, who is actually a man named Zorn, but again, that's another video, unleashes an EMP directly on Jean that causes her to have a planetary-scale stroke. Despite Jean's immense power, she dies in Cyclops' arms, telling him to live, because all she ever did was die on him. And that was the 5th death of Jean Grey, though in the final page of the story it is revealed that a Phoenix egg is incubating on the blue area of the moon, indicating that she would eventually return. This is explored further in Grant Morrison's final arc on X-Men, Here Comes Tomorrow, which is set 150 years into the future. Here, Jean is awoken too soon and is used by an evil beast to commit more genocide, though she ultimately remembers her life and returns to the White Hot Room, which is the heart and home of the Phoenix existing outside of time and space, and she prunes this dystopian timeline so that it never happens. And the Phoenix egg is never mentioned again. Instead, during the miniseries Phoenix Endsong in 2005, just 1 year after her death, the Shi'ar managed to pull pieces of the Phoenix together in an attempt to destroy it once and for all. However, a small fragment manages to escape and, disorientated, goes to Earth and resurrects Jean. The Phoenix is looking for an energy source to rebuild itself from, and has come looking for Cyclops. Though, as it was awoken too soon, Jean and the Phoenix are out of balance. She requires Logan's help to regain control of herself and the cosmic force. So he kills her. Again, and again, and again. Whilst it's not exactly clear how many times Wolverine kills Jean, I am counting 6 times on page. So, I'll go with that. With the Phoenix now weakened, Jean, back in control, decides to launch herself 50 feet into the ice and freezes to death. Yes, I'm not even exaggerating. Jean Grey has died at least 7 times in the last 3 pages. Despite her sacrifice, the Phoenix does abandon its host and tries to bond with Emma Frost instead. By issue 5, Jean returns, resurrecting herself without the Phoenix Force, which shocks everyone, including the Force itself. Jean reasserts that the Phoenix and herself are one being, and they rebond and decide to return to the White Hot Room, in effect dying again, so that they can heal and pull all of the pieces of themselves back together and hopefully return one day as a complete being. Miss Grey Summers will remain dead for the next 13 years, but in the meantime, another Jean Grey made her way into the main Marvel universe. After the events of Avengers vs. X-Men, Beast decides to bring the original X-Men from 1963 to the present as a way to shock Cyclops out of his current actions. Without the presence of Professor X, this teen Jean Grey has access to her telepathic abilities much sooner than she originally did, and quickly learns of her entire life, from the Phoenix to her clone to her alternate future children, and not wanting to go through all of those horrible events herself, decides to stay in the present. 4 years later, in the 2017 Jean Grey solo book, Teen Jean has a premonition that the Phoenix is returning to Earth to bond with her, and so tries her very best to avert this situation. However, the Phoenix cannot be stopped, And so, in Jeangrey issue 10, the cosmic force returns to Earth and incinerates the teenager, deeming this Jean to be flawed for fighting against it. But Teen Jean finds herself in the White Hot Room and fights the fiery bird until it's ultimately convinced to return her to life. Whilst that is all happening, the Phoenix also has resurrected adult Jean Grey in New Mexico. It is set up a contained bubble where Jean lives with her family and friends, all of which are dead in the real world. The X-Men discover what is happening and help Jean return to her senses, freeing herself from this fake world that the Phoenix has created. Whilst the cosmic force wants to remain with Jean, she rejects it, deciding not to live with that burden anymore. And after 13 years, adult Jean Grey is alive again, alongside her teenage self. Next, in the X-Men Blue story arc Poison X, the original time-displaced X-Men find themselves bonded to symbiotes when on a space mission. Jean Grey is then attacked and assimilated by a poison, an alien that consumes symbiotes, which in essence kills Jean to become Poison Marvel Girl. I know, how original. Alongside the other poisons, she attacks Earth's heroes, but in a shocking twist, it is revealed that her poison didn't fully consume Jean's mind, and she's been fighting against it this entire time. Using the poison's hive mind, the young Jean Grey kills the Poison Queen, thereby ending the invasion. She also uses her powers to rebuild her own body out of psychic energy, which is extremely impressive. But since her mind survived, I don't think I can count this as a death. Shortly after this, the time-displaced X-Men are sent back to the moment they left in the 60s without their memories to preserve the timeline, meaning we're back down to just one Jean Grey. In 2019, the mutant nation of Krakoa is being established, and Jean, returning to the moniker of Marvel Girl and the divisive green dress, is part of a mutant strike force assigned with disabling the mother mold that is currently orbiting around the sun. In House of X issue 4, Jean provides telepathic communication with the team and Professor X, who is 90 million miles away on Earth. They do succeed in destroying the mother mold, but it's at the cost of their lives as Orchis retaliates. Monet St. Croix sends Jean into an escape pod, but she doesn't get very far as she is crushed by incoming Sentinels in deep outer space. So how does she combat with that without the use of the Phoenix? Well, in House of X issue 5, it is revealed to both us and the citizens of Krakoa that mutants have actually mastered resurrection. Using Goldball's eggs, made viable by the reality warper Proteus, mutant DNA is placed inside and cellular replication is kickstarted by the mutant healer Elixir. Then, Tempest manipulates time to age up the bodies to the desired age. Hope Summers, the mutant messiah and Omega-level power mimicker, allows the rest of the team to use their powers at peak levels and in unison, providing the spark required to resurrect people. They are known as the Five. Professor X, who has every single mutant mind stored into Cerebro, then gives the body their mind back, and this is mutant resurrection. Jean is reborn alongside the rest of her strike force and is considered a hero for her sacrifice. Marvel Girl is happy on Krakoa, spending more time than ever with the rest of her family. But not everything is plain sailing from now on. Her next death is actually at the hands of Logan in Wolverine issue 1 in 2020. Here, Jean's situationship regains consciousness and finds himself in Alaska surrounded by the bodies of his friends, including Jean's, and eventually learns that he was mind-controlled by the Pale Girl into killing them, as he thought they were villains. Jean is once again resurrected by the Five, off-panel. Sometime after this, she starts a new official X-Men team with Cyclops, voted for by the mutants of Krakoa. These X-Men, and Jean in particular, are heavily involved in the 2022 Marvel event Judgment Day. In this story, Iron Man and Mr. Sinister create a new Celestial in the hopes that it would stop the Eternals' war with mutants. However, the Progenitor, as it calls itself, decides to judge everyone on Earth and deems that they have failed. As a result, the Celestial begins to destroy the world, and Jean is one of many heroes that tries to stop it. But she is incinerated, alongside Echo, who is at that point the host of the Phoenix Force. Again, don't worry about it. another video all about the many hosts of the Phoenix Force is coming soon. Jean is quickly resurrected by the Five and is actually a member of the team that convinces the progenitor to undo its judgment and restore the world. A year later, Jean attends the 3rd annual Hellfire Gala, which is attacked by the Sentinel Nimrod and the villainous organisation Orcus. The entire venue is toppled, but Jean prevents any of the guests being crushed by Rebel through her telekinesis. And while she is distracted, Moira McTaggart, who is now an evil robot lady, sneaks up on Jean and stabs her in the back with a blade coated in Blightspell, a magic substance that disrupts mutant abilities. Jeangrey dies again, and her body becomes a skeleton within minutes. As you've probably guessed by this point, after death, Jean finds herself in the white hot room again, but this time is captured by Mother Righteous. Don't worry about her, who plans to use the power of the Phoenix to ascend to Dominionhood, and thus drags a broken and fractured Jean around on a leash. Whilst Mother Righteous's plan fails after being blocked by Enigma, an AI Dominion that exists outside of time and space, again, don't worry about it. Rachel and Hope Summers determine that the only way to defeat a Dominion that exists outside of time and space is through the Phoenix, and so kill Jean again. Yes, you heard me right. Kill her again. Yes, she's already dead, but as Ascani so eloquently put it, killing someone that is already dead is a double negative, or a paradox. So that equals infinite life, I guess. Jean returns and is more coherent, but is not fully restored, and so helps Hope Summers hunt down the Phoenix. The Mutant Messiah sacrifices herself to force the fiery bird to die and experience a rebirth itself, starting a new cycle of life for the Force and Jean. And so, in the pages of Rise of the Powers of X issue 5, Jeangrey finally returns to the universe unified as Phoenix for the first time in 19 years, and defeats the Dominion Enigma in a battle across time and space, fueled by the power of every mutant that has ever, and will ever, live in the multiverse. We've now finally reached the current from the Ashes era, where Jean has remained as Phoenix and is travelling the cosmos to help those in need outside of Earth. In Phoenix issue 4, Jean comes face to face with Gore the God Butcher, who fatally wounds Jean as he stabs her with All Black, the Necro Sword, and she dies in the depths of space. However, she is the Phoenix after all, and so comes back within a few hours stronger than ever. And that's every time Jeangrey has died and been resurrected at the time of this recording. And so, according to my calculations, Jeangrey has had a whopping 20 deaths, at least, and an incredible 19 resurrections. I feel like that has to have set a new world record or something. But anyways, I hope you've all enjoyed this video. If you have, make sure you like and subscribe. And why don't you comment down below which Jeangrey death is the most poignant to you? I think to me, it's either got to be the death in X-Men 137 on the moon, or her death in New X-Men 150. But let me know down below, and I'll hopefully see you all in the next video.